The air in the cavern was stale, thick with the scent of damp earth and something older, something almost metallic. Dust motes danced in the beam of Rebecca's headlamp, each a tiny, swirling universe suspended in the oppressive quiet. William ran a gloved hand along the cold stone of the wall, his expression unreadable in the shifting light. Sean, ever restless, paced the perimeter, his flashlight a frantic white pulse. Desmond stood before the wall, the apple of Eden heavy in his palm. It pulsed with a faint warmth, a subtle vibration against his skin. He could feel its power, a strange hum resonating deep within him. It felt wrong. Powerful, yes, but wrong. Are you certain, Desmond? William's voice was low, a rumble that echoed strangely in the confined space. The question wasn't about the location. It was about the risk. Desmond didn't answer immediately. He focused on the wall, on the intricate carvings that spiraled across its surface. They weren't mere decoration. They were a language, a code, a language his subconscious was already beginning to decipher. A terrible understanding was forming, a sense of dread settling in his stomach. Yes, he finally said, the word tasting like dust. This is it. He pressed the apple to the wall. The stone yielded with a low groan. A seam appeared, widening with a grinding sound that sent tremors through the cavern floor. A doorway, impossibly large and flawlessly geometric, opened before them. It swallowed the light, revealing a darkness deeper than the surrounding rock. The heart of the temple, a rush of cold air, ancient and stagnant, poured from the opening. The smell intensified, now tinged with ozone. Desmond felt a peculiar tingling across his skin, a strange electric current. He stepped across the threshold, the others following close behind. Inside, the cavern was vast, echoing with a silent grandeur. The walls were lined with complex machinery, consoles and displays glowing with an archaic luminescence. Cables snaked across the floor, pulsating with barely contained energy. This wasn't some forgotten ruin. It was a machine, an immense, incomprehensible machine. Remarkable. Rebecca breathed, her voice hushed with awe. The Grand Temple. They actually found it. A large holographic display flickered to life, dominated by a countdown timer. December 21, 2012. A date etched in the air, pulsing with an ominous red glow. The second disaster. The words struck Desmond with the force of a physical blow. He felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. A disaster. Imminent. And somehow, he was connected to it. He was a part of it. What does that mean? Sean asked, his voice betraying a flicker of unease. William ignored him. He was already approaching a console, his fingers dancing across the controls. Let's see what else this thing has to offer. As William initiated the system sequence, Desmond felt a peculiar dizziness wash over him. The cavern began to blur, the edges of his vision distorting. A wave of nausea rose in his throat. He stumbled, catching himself on the cold stone wall. Desmond, are you all right? Rebecca asked, reaching out a hand. But it was too late. His consciousness fractured. The cavern dissolved. The cold stone vanished. The scent of dust and ozone was replaced by the damp, cloying smell of horses and mud. He was standing in a bustling London street. The year, according to the signs and the clothing of the passers-by, was 1754. The cobblestones pressed uncomfortably against the soles of his boots. The air vibrated with the sounds of horses' hooves, the cries of street vendors, and the murmur of countless voices. It was overwhelming, a sensory assault that sent a jolt of panic through him. He was not himself. He was someone else. A tall, imposing figure with dark hair pulled back from a stern face, dressed in the fine, dark clothing of a nobleman. A man who carried himself with an air of quiet authority. Haytham Kenway. Desmond tried to speak, to protest, but the words that came out were not his own. A clipped, precise voice, laced with a subtle, aristocratic accent. Miko is late. He was observing a production at the Theatre Royal, a stage filled with painted scenery and costumed actors. A play, though the narrative was unimportant. What was important was the man standing in the shadows. A man with shifty eyes and a nervous demeanor. Miko. Haytham moved with a predatory grace, weaving through the crowd, his hand instinctively moving towards the hidden pistol beneath his coat. The emotions that surged through him were not his own, a cold, calculating focus, an unwavering determination, a ruthless efficiency. He cornered Miko. A brief, brutal struggle, the metallic click of the pistol, the sickening thud of the body hitting the ground. The medallion. Miko's hand clutched a small, ornate medallion. Haytham seized it, the metal cold and heavy in his palm. The object pulsed with the same faint energy he felt from the apple of Eden. A key. A key to something ancient and powerful. He returned to his associates, his expression unreadable. He handed over the medallion. "This will grant us access," he stated, the words imbued with a chilling certainty, "to those who came before." The memories flowed, a dizzying torrent of images and sensations. He was sailing aboard a ship, the Providence, giving orders, suppressing mutiny, landing in Boston, gathering men, Charles Lee, William Johnson, Thomas Hickey, Benjamin Church, Jonathan Pitcairn, each a pawn in Haytham's grand scheme. He was killing. Silas Thatcher, a slave trader, felled by a single, precise shot. The liberation of Kanyen Keha, Ka tribespeople, a calculated gesture of goodwill, a justification for his actions. And then Kenyetio, her eyes, dark and piercing, held a mixture of suspicion and something else. Something that resonated deep within his Haytham's soul. "Kill Braddock," she instructed, her voice low and resolute. "And I will help you find the storehouse." The battle at Fort Duquesne, the chaos of war, the brutal efficiency of Haytham's movements, the flash of steel, a body falling. He saw himself and Kenyetio standing before the entrance of the Grand Temple. The medallion, it wouldn't work. A frustrating dead end. And then, a moment of vulnerability. A shared glance. A nascent emotion, fragile and unexpected. Desmond recoiled. The memories were too intense, too visceral. He was drowning in Haytham's experiences, his motivations, his desires. "This is insane," he muttered, trying to break free from the relentless flow of images. Suddenly, he was back in the cavern. William and Rebecca were staring at him, concern etched on their faces. Sean was studying him with a detached curiosity. "What was that?" Sean asked. I don't know," Desmond stammered, struggling to regain his bearings. It was a memory of Hatham, but so much more than just a memory. William stepped forward, his face grim. "You're experiencing the Animus's full potential?" "Desmond, we're seeing echoes of the past, but we're also feeling them." A wave of anger washed over Desmond, a potent, unfamiliar feeling. He felt like a puppet, manipulated by forces beyond his control. He was being treated as a tool, a vessel for someone else's history. "I'm being used," he accused, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You're just using me to dig through someone else's past. I don't even know who this guy was." William's expression hardened. "Desmond, you were chosen for a reason. You are the key to understanding." "Shut up," Desmond cut him off. "Don't tell me what I am. I didn't ask for any of this." William's hand shot out, striking Desmond across the face. The force of the blow sent him staggering backwards. The cavern swam before his eyes. The impact jolted Desmond back to himself. He stared at William, stunned and furious. The casual violence, the cold indifference in his father's eyes. He saw then the same ruthless efficiency he'd witnessed in Hatham's memories. The tension in the cavern was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sean watched them, his face impassive. "We need to calm down." Sean interjected, his voice devoid of emotion. "Desmond, explore the Grand Temple, or return to the Animus. It's your choice." Desmond looked at the cavern, at the machinery, at the looming threat of the second disaster. Then he looked at his father, at the cold, calculating gaze that had just struck him. He didn't know what waited for him in the past, but he knew one thing. He couldn't trust the people standing in front of him. The air hung heavy, a damp shroud clinging to the London dusk. It tasted of coal smoke and something older, a lingering scent of secrets, of shadowed dealings. A chill seeped into his bones, a cold that went deeper than the November air. It was the chill of purpose, a grim resolve. Hatham moved through the thronging streets with the practiced ease of a predator. His footsteps were silent on the cobblestones, each movement deliberate, each glance calculated. He wasn't merely walking, he was hunting. The Theatre Royal loomed, its facade a deceptive mask of elegance, a stage for artifice, a backdrop for brutality. Within its walls, a performance was about to conclude, not of actors and playwrights, but of life and death. He found Miko seated within the velvet confines of his private box, eyes fixed upon the stage, oblivious to the shadow creeping behind him. The man didn't reek of fear yet. He reeked of expensive tobacco and the complacency of the elite. There was no conversation, no wasted words. Hatham's presence alone was a statement, a warning. Miko seemed to understand. His eyes darted around, seeking an escape that didn't exist. The strike was swift, decisive, a silent ballet of violence. The blade, a cold sliver of steel, slid home between the ribs with a sickening, muted thud. Miko's body slumped, his final breath stolen before he could even gasp. A dark stain blossomed on the fine velvet of his coat. Hatham felt nothing. No remorse. No satisfaction. Only a dull sense of completion. It was a transaction. A necessary evil. A step closer to the truth. The medallion. He retrieved it. the weight of it tangible against his palm. It was crafted from darkened silver, intricately carved with unfamiliar symbols. They pulsed with a faint, almost imperceptible hum. A key. He could feel it. A key to something immense, something hidden. Those who came before, the words echoed in his mind. A cryptic directive, a promise of power, a responsibility. He left the theater without a backward glance. The crowd flowed around him, oblivious to the life he had extinguished. London's shadows swallowed him whole. The summons arrived swiftly, a sealed missive delivered by a stoic messenger. The crown demanded his presence at a discreet gathering, a meeting of minds, a discussion of purpose. The journey to the British-American colonies stretched before him, a vast expanse of ocean and wilderness, a land ripe with opportunity and fraught with danger. The ship pitched and rolled, a relentless rhythm against the backdrop of a churning gray sea. He stood on the deck, the wind whipping at his hair. The salt spray stung his face. He ignored it. His thoughts were consumed by the task at hand. The storehouse, the promise of forgotten knowledge. Louis Mills's rebellion was quickly suppressed. A disloyal crewman attempting to betray him to a passing ship. Such weakness could not be tolerated. A quick and decisive silencing ensured the Providence continued its voyage. Boston, a bustling port city, a melting pot of ambition and intrigue, a focal point for his operations. He arrived with a purpose. 5 men, 5 loyalties to cultivate, 5 instruments to wield.
Charles Lee,
a charismatic soldier, ambitious and unpredictable. William Johnson, a shrewd negotiator, a man of influence. Thomas Hickey, a cunning rogue, useful for his connections. Benjamin Church, a seasoned operative, relied upon for his expertise. And Jonathan Pitcairn, a soldier of unwavering resolve. Each man had his price. Each man had his vulnerabilities. Haytham exploited them all. Silas Thatcher was an obstacle, a slaver preying on the innocent. His demise was swift and efficient, a necessary consequence. The liberation of the Canyon Keha, a gesture of goodwill, a calculated maneuver to secure their assistance. They were a proud people, but even pride could be bought with the promise of freedom. K'nai-Tio, a woman of fierce intelligence and unwavering resolve. Her gaze was unsettling, penetrating, her motivations opaque, but her assistance was vital. Kill General Braddock, she demanded, her voice a low rasp, and I will guide you to the storehouse. Braddock's retreat from Fort Duquesne was a spectacle of chaos and desperation. Haytham moved with a surgeon's precision, carving a path through the panicked soldiers. The general fell. A final, ignominious end to a man consumed by arrogance. The Grand Temple. The entrance was hidden, camouflaged. A testament to the ingenuity of those who had come before. The medallion, it refused to cooperate. The symbols remained stubbornly inert. A frustrating impasse. He turned to K'nai-Tio, his expression unreadable. It does not work, he stated, the words clipped and devoid of emotion. Her eyes met his. A flicker of something unreadable danced within their depths. A hint of vulnerability. A momentary glimpse of something more. He felt a stirring, a disquieting sensation that he quickly suppressed. Such sentimentality was a weakness, a liability. He was a Templar. Emotion had no place in his calculations. Perhaps another method is required, he suggested, pushing the feeling down. The air thickened. A palpable tension filled the space. Kanye Tio spoke then, her voice barely a whisper. There is another way. The touch of her hand on his arm sent a jolt through him. A surprising warmth. He resisted the urge to pull away. And what is that? A connection, she murmured, leaning closer. A shared understanding, a bond. His lips were inches from hers. He tasted the subtle sweetness of her breath, the scent of pine and earth. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. The attraction was undeniable, yet he knew it was a dangerous path, a distraction from his purpose. He hardened his resolve. He could not afford to be swayed by emotions. This wasn't a moment for sentimentality. This was a moment for action. He would continue his mission, no matter the cost. The Templar Order depended on it. The rain fell in a relentless curtain, blurring the gaslight glow of Boston's cobbled streets. Each drop a cold, insistent reminder of the encroaching winter. Haytham pulled his coat tighter, the fine wool offering little respite from the damp chill. He observed the bustling port, a hive of activity beneath a bruised, gray sky. Ships creaked and groaned, their rigging straining against the wind. The air carried the pungent tang of salt and fish, mingling with the sweeter sense of wood smoke and roasting meat. He sought out Charles Lee, finding him in a dimly lit tavern, nursing a tankard of ale. The soldier was a man of restless energy, his eyes darting about, always assessing, always searching for an advantage. A dangerous quality, but a useful one. Lee.
Haytham greeted.
His voice low and deliberate. Lee barely glanced up. He took another swig of ale, the liquid disappearing down his throat with a satisfying gulp.
Kenway.
A surprise. I have a proposition for you, Haytham said, ignoring the veiled contempt in Lee's tone. One that aligns with your ambitions. Lee's eyes narrowed. He finally looked up, studying Haytham with a predatory gaze. And what might that be? Haytham spoke of the storehouse, of forgotten knowledge, of power beyond comprehension. He laid out his plan, the details precise and unwavering. He omitted nothing, trusting that Lee's ambition would outweigh any reservations. Lee listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Haytham finished, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Ambitious, he murmured. Very ambitious. What's in it for me? Haytham smiled, a cold, detached expression. Influence. Opportunity. The chance to shape the destiny of this land. It was a calculated gamble, a manipulation of Lee's ego. And it worked. I'm in, Lee said, a predatory gleam in his eyes. But I expect loyalty. And a share of the spoils. Haytham nodded. Of course. He moved on to William Johnson, the colonial official, a man steeped in politics and influence. The meeting took place in Johnson's opulent study, surrounded by maps, ledgers, and the scent of polished wood and leather. Johnson was a man of careful consideration, a master of diplomacy. He required a different approach. Haytham appealed to Johnson's sense of order, to his belief in progress, to his desire to secure the future for the colonies. He painted a picture of chaos and instability, of threats lurking in the shadows. He suggested that the storehouse held the key to restoring balance. Johnson listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. He questioned Haytham relentlessly, probing for weaknesses, testing his resolve. "What guarantee do I have that you are not seeking power for yourself?"
Johnson asked.
His gaze unwavering. Haytham paused. He considered his response carefully. "I assure you, Mr. Johnson, my motives are purely altruistic. I seek only to safeguard the future." A slight smile touched Johnson's lips. "A noble aspiration, Mr. Kenway. A noble aspiration indeed." He secured Johnson's support. Another piece of the puzzle fallen into place. Thomas Hickey, a rogue and a smuggler. A man who dealt in shadows and secrets. Haytham found him in a hidden alleyway, the reek of stale ale and refuse hanging heavy in the air. Hickey was not swayed by promises of power or influence. He was motivated by greed. Haytham offered him coin, a substantial sum, a promise of further rewards. Hickey accepted without hesitation. Benjamin Church, a seasoned operative, a man of unwavering loyalty.
Haytham appealed to Church's sense of duty,
To his desire to protect the colonies from foreign threats. He presented a compelling case, painting a picture of impending doom. Church's eyes were keen, assessing, unwavering. He spoke little, but his silence spoke volumes. He agreed to join Haytham's cause. Jonathan Pitcairn, a soldier, a man of iron will and unwavering resolve. Haytham appealed to his sense of duty, to his loyalty to the crown. He presented Pitcairn with evidence of a looming conspiracy, a threat to the colonies. The meeting was brief, a formal exchange of words. Pitcairn's acceptance was curt, efficient. He freed the Kanyenkeha, tribespeople, orchestrating the event with ruthless precision. A small contingent of soldiers, a carefully placed distraction, and a swift, silent intervention. The tribespeople emerged from the slave traders' hold, blinking in the unfamiliar sunlight. A moment of liberation, a calculated maneuver. He watched them, his expression impassive. He saw their gratitude, their hope. But he also saw their vulnerability. He knew that he could use them, that their allegiance could be leveraged to further his goals. Silas Thatcher, the slave trader, a creature of depravity and greed. Haytham found him amidst the smoke and screams of the stockade as the tribespeople broke their chains. The end was swift, a hidden edge for a man who dealt in human lives. Thatcher slumped into the mire of the fort, his greed extinguished in the dirt. A fleeting moment of something, a flicker of compassion. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. He suppressed it. Such sentimentality was a weakness. He was a Templar. He had a mission. The forest pressed in around him, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Kenyeti moved with a silent grace. The blood of Edward Braddock was still fresh on the trail behind them, the price she had demanded for her help. Her eyes were sharp, observant, constantly scanning their surroundings. She watched him, her gaze unwavering. "You do not share my people's values," she observed, her voice low and devoid of emotion. Haytham did not deny it. "My values are those of order, of progress, of securing a better future. Your order is built on the suffering of others,"
she countered.
her voice laced with contempt. Your progress comes at the expense of the innocent. He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Sometimes, sacrifices must be made. She paused. Her eyes narrowed. And who decides which sacrifices are acceptable? He did not answer. The question hung in the air. A challenge. A condemnation. She turned and vanished into the trees, leaving him alone in the silence of the forest. The grand temple, still elusive, the medallion unresponsive. He felt a growing frustration, a sense of urgency. Time was running short. The feeling of being watched intensified. He sensed a presence, an unseen observer. He scanned the surroundings, his senses heightened. A shadow flickered in the periphery of his vision, a rustling in the leaves. He turned, his hand instinctively moving towards his pistol. Nothing. He dismissed it as his imagination, but the feeling lingered, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He was not alone. The rain hammered against the windows of the small inn, a relentless rhythm accompanying the quiet despair within. A persistent,
Mournful sound.
He sat alone, a glass of amber ale untouched before him. The fire struggled against the damp, casting flickering shadows that danced across the rough, hewn walls. Each shadow a ghost of a memory. He remembered Cagnetio's eyes, dark and intense, piercing the carefully constructed facade he presented to the world. He felt a strange, unsettling pull towards her, a vulnerability he had long suppressed. A dangerous warmth. It was a distraction. He pushed it down, burying it beneath layers of duty and resolve. The medallion felt heavy in his pocket, a tangible reminder of his mission, a key to unlocking the secrets of the past. He traced its contours with his fingertips, the cold metal a stark contrast to the simmering emotions within. He needed to focus. He needed to find the storehouse. Failure was not an option. The Templar Order depended on him. The fate of the colonies, perhaps the world, rested on his shoulders. He recalled the battle at Fort Duquesne, the chaos, the carnage, the exhilaration of victory. He'd moved through the fray with a surgeon's precision, a whirlwind of steel and determination. He felt no remorse, no hesitation. He was a weapon, a tool. Cagnetio's face flashed through his mind. Her expression a mixture of gratitude and something else, a quiet understanding. It was a confusing emotion, an unwelcome intrusion. He ignored it. He had a purpose. The forest, a vast expanse of wilderness, a place of shadows and secrets. He navigated the tangled undergrowth, his senses heightened, alert to any sign of danger. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The silence was broken only by the drip, drip, drip of rainwater. He watched Braddock fall, the man's ambition bleeding out into the cold earth. It was a pathetic end for a soldier of such renown, a testament to the futility of a life spent serving the wrong cause. He felt only a quiet satisfaction as he wiped his blade. The general was finally removed from the equation. He thought of the Kanyenkehaka village, the liberation, a calculated act of goodwill. He'd freed them from the shackles of slavery, only to bind them to his cause. It was a necessary compromise. He justified it as a means to an end. But Cagnetio questioned him, challenged him. She saw through his justifications. She saw the darkness within him. He remembered her words. Your path is one of shadows. Kenway, you speak of order, but you only bring a different kind of winter to these lands. The words stung, a sharp rebuke. He pushed them away. He refused to acknowledge their truth. He was a Templar. He served a higher purpose. He'd revealed his feelings, a foolish impulse, a moment of weakness. He'd confessed, hesitantly, a flicker of something more. She'd returned a gaze of profound sadness, a quiet resignation. He felt a pang of regret, a fleeting moment of loss. He quickly extinguished it. Such emotions were a liability. He recalled her touch. A brief, unexpected contact. A jolt of electricity. The warmth of her hand on his arm. It was a dangerous sensation. He suppressed it. He had to. The storehouse. It eluded him. He pursued every lead, followed every clue, but to no avail. The medallion remained stubbornly inert. He thought of the 5 men he'd gathered. Lee, Johnson, Hickey, Church, Pitcairn. Each a pawn in his grand scheme, each manipulated for his own purposes. He felt a flicker of guilt, a brief pang of conscience. He dismissed it as weakness. He was a Templar. He served a higher purpose. The ends justified the means. He considered Charles Lee's volatile nature a dangerous ally, a constant source of potential betrayal. He kept him close, monitoring his every move. William Johnson, a shrewd politician, a man of influence, a useful pawn. He'd cultivated Johnson's support through subtle manipulation, appealing to his ambition, his desire for order. Thomas Hickey, a rogue, a smuggler, a man of ill repute. He utilized Hickey's connections in the underworld, leveraging his access to valuable information. Benjamin Church, a seasoned operative, a reliable soldier. He trusted Church's judgment, his experience. Jonathan Pitcairn, a soldier, a man of unwavering loyalty. He relied on Pitcairn's strength, his resolve. He felt a growing sense of isolation, a creeping unease. He was surrounded by allies, yet he felt utterly alone. The rain continued to fall, a relentless drumbeat against the window pane. He finished his ale, the taste bitter and metallic on his tongue. He rose, brushing the damp from his coat. He had work to do, a mission to complete. He stepped out into the rain, swept streets of Boston. The city lights blurred through the downpour. He was a Templar, a soldier, a servant of a higher purpose. He walked on. The memory of their parting at the Grand Temple weighed on him more than the failure of the medallion itself. Kenatio had remained in the valley, a guardian of the secrets he could not yet touch, while he returned to the noise of the city. He felt a strange mix of confusion and regret, thinking of the man he could have been, of a life of peace far from the machinations of the Order. But he was a Templar. He was Hatham Kenway. He turned toward the Green Dragon Tavern to meet Charles Lee, his silhouette dissolving into the shadows of Boston as the rain continued to fall. The ancient machinery hummed, sending a low vibration through the soles of his boots. It did little to ward off the damp chill that clung to the limestone walls of the cave. Desmond huddled deeper into his hoodie, the fabric damp with sweat and shadows. High above, the New York storm muffled itself against the earth, a relentless, mournful rhythm. He remembered the feeling of the animus severing, the abrupt return to the present, the confusion, the disorientation, the weight of his father's hand, the sting of his reprimand, Charles Lee's recruitment, the realization that the history he'd believed in, the simple narrative of good versus evil, was a carefully constructed fabrication, a web of deceit, woven with ambition and manipulation. He felt a tremor of unease, a growing skepticism. The memories, once a window into the past, now felt like a trap, a labyrinth of hidden motives and unspoken agendas. He gripped his plastic water bottle, the liquid lukewarm and flat. The air in the temple was stale, tasting of ozone and dust, clinging to the roof of his mouth. He remembered Hatham's certainty, his unwavering conviction, the chilling efficiency with which he dispatched his opponents. Was he a hero or a villain? The line blurred, the distinction vanished. He thought of his father, William, standing before the grand temple, the cold, calculating gaze, the unwavering determination. He saw a reflection of Hatham in his father's eyes, a disturbing echo. He wanted to reject it, to deny the connection, but he couldn't. The memories were undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming. He was being manipulated, used as a tool, a pawn in a larger game. But by whom? And for what purpose? He felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to lash out. But he restrained himself. He was not Hatham. He was not a Templar. He was Desmond Miles, and he would not be controlled. The image of Hatham and Caniatio lingered, a ghost in the corner of his mind. The stolen moment of vulnerability, the unspoken longing, a flicker of something human. It was a dangerous distraction. He pushed it away, burying it beneath layers of doubt and uncertainty. The fight with William, a brief,
Brutal confrontation.
the shock of his father's violence. The realization that he was not safe, that he could not trust anyone. He felt a profound sense of isolation, a creeping dread. He was adrift in a sea of deception, with no compass and no anchor. The temporal anomalies, the power cell retrievals, the sudden, jarring interruptions, the constant need to return to the present, to gather energy for the animus. They felt deliberate, purposeful. Was he truly exploring history? Or was he being guided, led down a predetermined path? He remembered Lucy, the betrayal, the apple of Eden, the realization that his own actions had been manipulated. He felt a cold knot tighten in his chest, a sense of despair. He was trapped in a cycle of deception, a perpetual loop of manipulation. Daniel Cross, a Templar mole, a ruthless killer, responsible for the purge of the assassin order. The information hit him like a physical blow. He had been so focused on the past, on Hatham's memories, that he had failed to notice the danger lurking in the present. Juno, a ghostly voice, whispering in his ear, offering guidance, revealing the secrets of the first civilization. But could he trust her? She was a remnant of a bygone era, a being of immense power and unknown motives. He remembered the choice, the pedestal, the opportunity to save the world. But at what cost? His death. He shuddered. The thought was repulsive, yet he couldn't dismiss it. It was a possibility, a potential outcome. He felt a weight settling upon him, an overwhelming sense of responsibility. He had to find the truth. He had to break the cycle. He had to save the world. But how? He looked toward the pedestal where the apple of Eden sat, the golden sphere acting as a key for the temple's vast systems. It glowed with a faint, rhythmic light, a silent witness to the ghosts he was forced to inhabit. He closed his eyes, focusing on the memories, on Hatham's actions, on Kenyetio's words. He searched for a clue, a sign, anything that could help him unravel the mystery. He remembered Hatham's pursuit of Charles Lee, the fiery rhetoric, the growing dissent, the sense of impending conflict. He recalled Connor's struggle, his determination, his unwavering resolve. He saw Hatham and Connor, father and son, two generations of warriors, bound by blood, divided by purpose. A flicker of understanding crossed his mind, a nascent realization. He saw the pattern, the cycle, the endless repetition. He opened his eyes. The rain still hammered against the window. The fire still sputtered. But something had changed. He was no longer merely an observer. He was a participant. He was Desmond Miles, and he was ready to fight. The scent of damp wool and stale ale clung to the air. A damp chill seeped through the tavern walls, settling deep within his bones. Desmond shivered, pulling his coat tighter. The rain drummed against the window panes, a relentless, mournful pulse. He stared into the dregs of his tankard, a murky, bitter liquid. He swirled it absently, the swirling motion reflecting his own internal turmoil, a labyrinth of doubt, a maze of fractured memories. Hatham. The name echoed in his mind, a persistent whisper. The face swam into focus, stern, unyielding, a mask of implacable resolve. A man driven by a purpose he hadn't understood. A man who seemed utterly devoid of weakness. Was he truly devoid of weakness? Or had he merely mastered the art of concealing it? The fight with William. The sudden, jarring violence. His father's hand, striking him across the face. The humiliation. The betrayal. It had shattered his illusions, exposing the cold, calculating core beneath the veneer of familial affection. He felt a pang of regret, a lingering sadness. For the father he'd thought he knew, for the relationship that had been irrevocably fractured. But he couldn't afford to dwell on it. He had a mission, a responsibility. Charles Lee's recruitment, a pivotal moment, a turning point. The realization that the narrative he'd been fed, the simple dichotomy of good versus evil, was a carefully constructed lie. A web of manipulation spun by forces beyond his comprehension. He recalled the weight of the medallion, the unsettling hum of its energy. A key. A gateway to something ancient and powerful. But to what? And at what cost? The animus sequences interrupted. Power cells to retrieve. A jarring disconnect from the flow of history. A constant reminder of his role as a conduit. A vessel for another's memories. Was he truly experiencing Hatham's memories? Or were they being filtered, shaped, manipulated by forces unseen? The unsettling feeling lingered. A sense of being watched, a prickling on the back of his neck, a silent presence just beyond the periphery of his awareness. He glanced around the tavern. The flickering lamplight cast long, distorted shadows across the room. The other patrons were lost in their own thoughts, oblivious to his unease. Or perhaps they weren't. Perhaps they were part of the larger deception. He shuddered. A wave of paranoia washed over him. Lucy. The word echoed in his mind, a painful reminder of his own complicity. The apple of Eden. The fateful choice. The consequences of his actions. Had he acted of his own free will? Or had he been a pawn in a game far larger than he could comprehend? Daniel Cross. A Templar mole. A ruthless killer. Responsible for the purge of the assassin order. The information felt like a punch to the gut. A devastating blow. He'd been so engrossed in the past, so focused on unraveling Hatham's motives, that he'd failed to recognize the threat lurking in the present. Juno, a disembodied voice, a spectral guide, offering fragments of truth. But could he trust her? She was a remnant of a forgotten age, a being of immense power and questionable allegiances. He recalled her warnings, the impending cataclysm, the threat of a new order, the potential for destruction, the timer, the countdown to December 21, 2012. A terrifying prospect of a world ending in fire, just as the ones who came before had witnessed. He looked toward the apple of Eden, the artifact resting where it had been used to unlock the deep reaches of the temple. Its golden surface seemed to pulse with a silent, heavy light, a subtle vibration, a promise of knowledge, a burden of responsibility. He closed his eyes, focusing on the memory of Hatham and Canetio, the stolen moment of vulnerability, the unspoken longing. He remembered Canetio's words, her piercing gaze, her unwavering conviction. Your order is built on the suffering of others. Your progress comes at the expense of the innocent. The words resonated within him, a stark condemnation. He thought of Connor, the Canien Keha warrior, driven by a righteous fury, a man who refused to compromise, a symbol of defiance. He recalled Connor's final moments, the desperate struggle against Charles Lee, the fatal wound, the defiant words, because no one else will. A chilling resolve settled within him. He would not succumb to the cycle. He would not be a pawn. He would fight. He opened his eyes. The rain continued to fall. The fire sputtered. He knew what he had to do. He had to find the truth. He had to unravel the web of deception. He had to break the chain. He stood, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. A daunting task, an impossible challenge. But he was Desmond Miles, and he wouldn't back down. He would confront the shadows. He would face the darkness. He would fight for the future. The rain pressed against the window pane, a relentless drumming. Each drop a cold, insistent reminder of the encroaching night. The tavern air was thick with the scent of damp wool and stale ale. A faint, acrid undertone lingered, a memory of spilled liquor and forgotten dreams. He sat alone, a solitary figure swallowed by the dim light. The fire struggled against the dampness, casting dancing shadows across the rough, hewn walls. Shadows that writhed and shifted, mimicking the turmoil within. The name surfaced unbidden, a spectral presence. The memories flooded back, visions of a man hardened by conviction, shaped by a purpose he'd never fully grasped. A man of chilling efficiency. Was he a villain? Or simply a product of his time? A soldier bound by an unwavering oath? The question echoed unanswered. The memory of the village elder's face remained, her voice a low hum in his mind. She had shown him the path, the vision of the sphere, and the symbols of a brotherhood he did not yet understand. The loss of his mother was the only truth he had left, a cold fire burning in his chest. He clenched his fist, a futile gesture, a release of bottled tension. He wouldn't succumb to bitterness. He wouldn't become like his father. Charles Lee's recruitment. The shift. The awareness that the carefully constructed narrative of history was riddled with lies. Deception woven into the fabric of reality. The comforting certainty of his past shattered, replaced by a creeping unease. He swirled the remaining ale. A muddy, stagnant pool, the taste bitter on his tongue. A reflection of his own internal state. The medallion. He remembered its weight, the unsettling energy that pulsed beneath his fingertips. A key to a hidden storehouse, a gateway to forgotten knowledge. But what awaited him within? Power, influence, control, or something far more sinister. The jarring interruptions, the abrupt severance from Hatham's memories, the urgent summons to retrieve power cells. Each jump leaving him disoriented, disconnected. A pawn on a temporal chessboard. He felt a growing suspicion, a sense of manipulation. Was he merely experiencing history? Or was he being guided, led down a predetermined path? Lucy, the name struck with the force of a physical blow. The apple of Eden. The betrayal. His own complicity in her death. A knot of guilt tightened in his chest. Had he made the right choice? Or had he condemned the world to an even greater fate? Daniel Cross. A name whispered in the shadows. A Templar assassin. A harbinger of destruction. The realization felt like a cold hand grasping his throat. He'd been consumed by the past, oblivious to the danger lurking in the present.
Juno's voice.
A spectral echo in his mind. A whisper of forgotten lore. A promise of salvation. But could he trust her? Or was she merely another manipulator? He closed his eyes, attempting to conjure Connor's face. A warrior. A symbol of resilience. A defiant spirit forged in the crucible of conflict. He remembered Connor's final moments. The brutal attack. The fatal wound. Yet, amidst the pain, there had been a profound sense of conviction. A steadfast refusal to surrender. Because no one else will. The words resonated within him. A call to action. A challenge to the status quo. He reached for the apple of Eden, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings. It hummed with a subtle energy, a faint vibration against his skin. A reminder of the burden he carried, the responsibility he bore. He opened his eyes. The rain continued its relentless assault. The fire flickered. He felt a surge of determination, a renewed sense of purpose. He wouldn't be a pawn. He wouldn't be a mere observer. He would unravel the truth. He would confront the shadows. He would fight for the future. He needed to understand. He needed to know. He recalled Cagnetio's words, the piercing gaze, the unwavering conviction. Your order is built on the suffering of others. Your progress comes at the expense of the innocent. The words were a stark indictment, a condemnation of the Templar philosophy. He thought of Samuel Adams, the advice he'd offered. Decrease your notoriety, a simple directive, a pragmatic solution, a recognition of the challenges he faced. Operating in a hostile environment, navigating a treacherous landscape of competing interests and hidden agendas. He needed allies. He needed information. He needed leverage. He stood, the chill seeping deep into his bones. The tavern seemed to press in around him, a suffocating cage. He pushed open the door, stepping out into the rain. Swept streets of Boston. The city lights blurred through the downpour, a shimmering mirage in the darkness. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the damp, salty air. The search continued. The hunt for truth. The fight for a future he barely understood. The cobblestones slick with rain. He moved with a purpose, a stealth honed by years of experience. Every sense heightened, every muscle alert. He needed to find Achilles Davenport, the assassin, the key to understanding. He recalled the reports, the rumors, a shadowy figure operating in the periphery of the conflict, a guardian of forgotten knowledge. He needed to earn his trust, to prove his worth, to convince him to train him. He remembered the bandits, the attack on the Davenport Manor, a calculated test, a demonstration of his skills. He'd passed, but at a cost. The name Connor, adopted, embraced, a symbol of his transformation, a declaration of his allegiance. He walked with a newfound confidence, a quiet determination. The Aquila, Achilles' ship, a vessel of freedom, a tool of rebellion, a symbol of hope. He imagined the wind in his sails, the spray of the ocean on his face, the boundless expanse of the sea stretching before him. He felt a flicker of excitement, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. The Eastern American seaboard, a vast expanse of coastline, a network of ports and settlements, a theater of war. He would patrol the waters, disrupt the trade routes, harass the British forces, strike at the heart of the Templar network. He would become an instrument of change, a shadow in the night, a whisper of defiance. A memory surfaced then, unbidden. Hatham's face, his voice. You seek power. The words lingered in the air, a chilling accusation. Did he? He considered the question, the ambition, the desire for control, the craving for influence. Was it a Templar trait? A genetic predisposition? Or was it something inherent within him? He pushed the thought away. He wouldn't succumb to self-doubt. He wouldn't allow his past to define him. He focused on the present, on the task at hand, the fight for a future he still struggled to comprehend. The rain intensified, washing over his face, a cleansing deluge. He walked on. The silence of the cave was absolute, a heavy shroud pressing against the low hum of the monitors. Deep within the grand temple, the air tasted of ozone and ancient, undisturbed stone. Here, the weight of the world felt physical, a crushing pressure in the cold, blue, lit dark. He sat alone, a solitary figure swallowed by the flickering lamplight. Shadows stretched and danced on the walls, mimicking the turbulence within. It was a prison of reflection, A cage of memory. Hatham. The name surfaced unbidden. A ghost of a man. His presence felt tangible. The memories poured forth visions of a stern face. A man sculpted from granite, determined, unyielding. Was he a villain? Or merely a soldier? A pawn in a game played by forces beyond comprehension? The question swirled, unanswered. A vortex of doubt. William's face materialized. His father's face. The sting of the blow remained. A sharp, enduring memory. The shattering of trust. The realization that the man he'd revered possessed a chilling capacity for violence. He clenched his fist. A futile gesture. A release of suppressed tension. He would not succumb to bitterness. He would not mirror his father's coldness. Charles Lee's recruitment echoed. The pivotal moment. The shattering of the illusion of a clear-cut narrative. The comforting certainty of the past dissolving into a murky complexity. He watched the data streams flicker across the glass. The lines of code were a frantic digital pulse, a mirror to his own inner turmoil. The isolation of the temple was a vacuum, pulling at the frayed edges of his sanity. The medallion, its weight pressed against his palm. A cold, metallic reminder of his quest, the unsettling hum of its dormant power. A key, but to what hidden chamber? The jarring interruptions, the abrupt severances from Hatham's memories, the relentless summons to retrieve power cells. Each jump a disorienting dislocation, a puppet on a temporal string. He felt a growing suspicion, a creeping sense of manipulation. Was he merely experiencing the past, or being guided, orchestrated, along a predetermined path? Lucy, the name struck him, a painful reverberation. The apple of Eden, the betrayal, his own unwitting participation. A knot of guilt tightened within him. Had he acted freely, or been a tool, a pawn manipulated by unseen forces? The question hung, a heavy shroud. Daniel Cross, a whispered threat. A Templar assassin, a harbinger of ruin. The realization struck with the force of a physical blow. He'd been fixated on the past, blinded to the present danger.
Juno's voice.
A spectral echo in his mind, offering cryptic hints, whispering of ancient lore. Could he trust her? Or was she merely another deceiver? He conjured Connor's image, the Canyon Kehaka warrior, a symbol of resilience, a defiant spirit forged in the crucible of conflict. He recalled Connor's final moments, the desperate fight, the fatal wound. Yet, amidst the agony, there was an unyielding resolve, because no one else will. The words ignited a spark, a renewed determination. He would resist the cycle. He would not be controlled. He traced the carvings on the apple of Eden. The cold metal pulsed with a faint energy, a subtle vibration against his skin, a reminder of the weight he carried. He opened his eyes. The rain continued its relentless pounding. The fire sputtered and coughed. He stood, the chill clinging to his bones. He needed to understand. He remembered Kenyetio's words, her penetrating gaze, the unwavering conviction in her voice. Your order is built on the suffering of others. Your progress comes at the expense of the innocent. The words felt like a brand, a condemnation of the Templar Creed. He thought of Samuel Adams' counsel. Decrease your notoriety. A simple directive. A pragmatic strategy. Operating in a hostile environment required prudence. It demanded a subtle approach. He needed allies. He needed information. He needed leverage. The tavern door creaked open. A gust of wind and rain swept in. He stepped out into the night. The city lights shimmered, blurred through the rain, slicked streets, a shimmering mirage. He needed to find Achilles Davenport. The reports spoke of a secluded figure, a guardian of lost knowledge, a potential key to unlocking the secrets of the past. He needed to earn his trust. He needed to prove his worth. He would begin his search. The rain pressed a damp chill against his collar, each drop a frigid kiss. The cobblestones beneath his boots were slick and treacherous. A symphony of muted sounds, the relentless drumming of the rain, the distant creak of ship masts, the muffled shouts from the port. He moved through the shadows, a solitary figure swallowed by the encroaching night. Boston, a city steeped in secrets, a crucible of ambition and intrigue, a battlefield of conflicting ideologies. He felt the weight of his purpose. The memory of the crystal sphere's light burned in his mind, a constant reminder of the path Juno had set before him. The responsibility he bore. Hatham, the name echoed in his mind. A ghostly specter. The memories swirled, visions of a stern face, unwavering determination, a chilling efficiency. A man who lived by a code. A man who believed in order. Was he truly so different? He pushed the thought aside. Self. Doubt was a luxury he couldn't afford. William's face. His father's face. The shock of the blow. The sudden betrayal. It was a fissure in his past. A rupture that could not be repaired. He walked on, the rain blurring his vision. Charles Lee's recruitment. A turning point. The shattering of the illusion of a clear, cut narrative. The comforting certainty of his understanding, dissolving into a murky ambiguity. The symbol. He visualized the emblem Juno had shown him in the sky, a mark of the hidden order he was destined to find. But what waited on the other side? He needed to find Achilles Davenport. The whispers of his name had followed him. A reclusive figure. A guardian of forgotten knowledge. A potential ally. He recalled the reports. Scattered fragments of information. Rumors of a skilled warrior. A man of unwavering principles. The Davenport Manor. A secluded estate hidden within the vast, untamed expanse of the frontier. Rumored to be surrounded by a fortress of defenses. He imagined the scene. A sprawling mansion, shrouded in mist. Guarded by watchful eyes. A place of secrets. A sanctuary. He felt a surge of anticipation. A flicker of hope. He passed a group of men huddled around a brazier. Their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They were discussing the ongoing conflict. The escalating tensions between the colonies and the British Crown. He overheard snippets of their conversation. Whispers of rebellion. Talk of independence. The air crackled with the potential for change. He moved on, mindful of his surroundings. He couldn't afford to draw attention to himself. He needed to remain undetected. He recalled the clan mother's somber face, her voice heavy with the weight of generations as she handed him the sphere. A pragmatic suggestion. A necessary precaution. He kept to the shadows. He avoided eye contact. He moved with a purpose. He reached the outskirts of the city. The houses thinned out. The streets narrowed. The air grew colder, damp. He felt a presence. A subtle shift in the atmosphere. A prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He paused. He scanned his surroundings. Nothing. He dismissed it as his imagination. A trick of the light. He continued his journey. He passed a dilapidated stable. A cluster of horses stood huddled together, shivering in the rain. A lone stable hand tended to their needs. He averted his gaze. He didn't want to engage. He didn't want to draw attention. He moved on. He reached the edge of the woods. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches intertwined, forming a dense canopy overhead. The woods felt different. A silence permeated the air, a stillness that was almost palpable. He hesitated. He glanced back at the city lights, a shimmering beacon in the distance. He took a deep breath. He stepped into the shadows. The woods swallowed him whole. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled his nostrils. The rain pattered softly on the leaves overhead. He moved cautiously, his senses heightened. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He felt a presence. This time, it was undeniable. He stopped. He listened. A faint sound. A subtle movement. He scanned his surroundings. A figure stood atop the porch of the dilapidated manor. An old man, his form weathered like the wood of the house. He leaned heavily on a cane, eyes sharp with a bitterness that mirrored the winter chill. "Go away," the old man rasped, his voice a ghost of former authority. He stood his ground. "I was told to find an assassin. I seek Achilles Davenport." The man studied him intently. His eyes narrowed. "And why are you looking for him?" "I have information," he replied. "Information he may find useful." The man paused, his gaze unwavering. "What kind of information?" He hesitated. He considered his words carefully. "Information about the Templars," he said. "Their plans." The man's eyes widened slightly. "The Templars?" "Yes," he confirmed. "I know their secrets." The man stepped closer. "Prove it." The rain continued to fall. The rain pressed a relentless assault against the tavern's aged frame, a constant drumming, a chilling reminder of the night's embrace. He stood at the edge of the smoldering ruins, the air thick with the scent of charred cedar and wet earth. The silence of the frontier was a heavy, atmospheric shroud, far deeper than the crackle of any tavern fire he might have known. Hatham. The name reverberated, a spectral echo. Visions flickered, a stern gaze. A man forged in steel, dedicated to a purpose he barely understood. A man of meticulous precision. Was he wrong? Or simply operating within a framework he'd accepted? A soldier bound by oaths? The questions lingered, unanswered, tangling in the damp air. William's face, his father's face. The sting of the blow. A betrayal. The shattering of a shared history. The realization of a coldness he'd long denied. He clenched his fist. A futile gesture. Charles Lee's recruitment. The pivotal moment, a unraveling of perceived truths. Certainty evaporated, leaving only a sea of doubt. He swirled the remnants of his ale, a bitter testament. The memory of the crystal sphere's light burned behind his eyelids. He possessed no physical key, only the heavy, internal emotional weight of a mission he barely understood and the desperate need to save his people. The interruptions, the jarring shifts, the abrupt severances from Hatham's memories. A disconcerting dance. He felt like a puppet, controlled by unseen hands. Lucy. The name struck. A pang of sorrow. The apple of Eden. A betrayal. His unintended involvement. A knot of guilt twisted within. Had he made the right choice? Or condemned countless others? Daniel Cross. A shadow emerging. A Templar assassin. A harbinger of destruction. He'd been lost in the past, blind to the dangers of the present. Juno's spectral voice, offering fragments of truth, whispers of forgotten lore, a tempting promise. But could he trust a being of such ancient power? He imagined Connor's defiant stance. A warrior, a beacon of resilience, a spirit unbroken, because no one else will. The words resonated deeply. A renewed determination ignited within him. He would resist the manipulations. He would forge his own path. He studied the apple, its subtle hum, a constant connection, a binding force. The rain intensified, the fire flickered. He stood. The chill clung to his bones. He needed clarity. He needed answers. Kenyetio's voice echoed in his memory. Her gaze, unwavering. Your order is built on the suffering of others. Your progress comes at the expense of the innocent. The words were a brand, a searing indictment. He recalled Samuel Adams's pragmatic counsel. Decrease your notoriety. A necessity. Prudence demanded it. He moved. Shadows concealed him. A dance of discretion. He passed men huddled around a brazier. Fragments of conversation reached him. Whispers of rebellion. Talk of freedom. A nation birthing. He pressed on. The stable. A scent of hay and horses. A lone stable hand tending to his duties. He averted his gaze. Connection was risk. He reached the edge of the woods. Tall trees. Intertwined branches. A dense canopy. Darkness awaited. The woods felt different. A stillness. An unnerving silence. He paused. He considered his course. The city lights. A distant beacon. He took a breath. He stepped forward. The woods enveloped him. Damp earth. Decaying leaves. The rain pattered softly on the canopy above. He proceeded cautiously. Each step deliberate. Every sense alert. He felt a presence. Subtle. Unmistakable. He stopped. He listened. A faint sound. A rustle of leaves. He scanned the shadows. A figure materialized. Tall. Lean. His face obscured. He wore a woolen cloak. His hand rested on the hilt of a sword. A watchful guardian. Who are you? The man's voice, low and steady, a measured tone. He stepped into the faint light. I'm looking for Achilles Davenport. The man studied him intently. His eyes narrowed, assessing, weighing his words. And why are you seeking him? The question hung, a silent challenge. He chose his words carefully. I possess information. Information he may find useful. The man's expression did not change, his gaze unwavering. What kind of information? A pointed inquiry, demanding specifics. He hesitated. A brief pause. The weight of the decision pressed upon him. Information about the Templars, he revealed, his voice low. Their plans. The man's eyes widened slightly. A flicker of surprise. A brief revelation. The Templars. The question held a note of disbelief. Yes, he confirmed. I'm familiar with their methods. Their objectives. The man stepped closer. The shadows seemed to deepen around him. Prove it. The rain continued its relentless rhythm. A constant, somber drumbeat against the night. The woods held their breath, waiting.